the hidden fire, when the darkness becomes your teacher. You are not born to fit in. You are not born to walk the paved roads that others follow blindly. If you are here, listening, then perhaps you already know there's something different about you. You've seen the world through a lens that others can't comprehend. You've walked through fires that left no scars visible to the eye, but burned deep into your soul. The world calls you strange, intense, maybe even broken. But what if I told you that those very wounds are the markings of a dark chosen one? Not by religion, not by dogma, but by the raw, ancient force of life that chooses a few to carry the shadows, to transmute pain into purpose. This is not about ego. This is not about power. This is about the sacred, brutal, solitary path of transformation. When I say dark chosen one, I don't mean evil. I mean those who are chosen to walk through the darkness of the soul so that they might bring forth a light not found in textbooks, temples, or traditions. You didn't volunteer for this. It was never a choice. It happened through pain, through abandonment, through betrayal, through the nights when you cried out and no one answered. And yet, you're still here, breathing, watching, searching. That's the calling. The first shadow pain is the pain of existential loneliness. Not the kind of loneliness that comes from being without people, but the kind that arises even when you're surrounded by them. It is the sense that no one can truly meet you at the depth of your being. You sit in rooms full of laughter and feel like a ghost. You speak truths that others cannot digest, and so you remain silent. You operate in a different frequency, one that doesn't match the noise of the world. And so you begin to pull away, not because you hate people, but because your soul is wired for solitude. This loneliness is not a punishment. It is a womb. In that silence, you begin to hear the whispers of the universe. Have you ever felt like your suffering was somehow sacred? Like it was breaking you open for something greater? That's the second shadow pain, the pain of sacred suffering. It is not the suffering of victims, but the suffering of initiates. Life strips away everything you thought you were. Your identity, your attachments, your dreams. It feels cruel. But what if suffering isn't here to destroy you? What if it's here to strip away the false layers so that your true essence can be revealed? The dark chosen one is not someone who avoids pain, but someone who learns how to alchemize it. You don't numb it. You don't escape it. You sit with it. You feel every ounce of it. And in doing so, you become something indestructible. You start to notice things others don't. You see behind the masks. You sense the lies in people's words. You feel the energy shift in a room without anyone saying a word. That's the third shadow pain, the pain of hyper-awareness. You live in a heightened state of perception. You can't unsee the truth. You can't pretend anymore. You see the manipulation in systems, the hypocrisy in institutions, the ego games in relationships. And the more you awaken, the more disconnected you feel, because awareness is both a gift and a curse. You begin to ask yourself, why was I given this vision if no one else can see? But here's the secret. Your vision is not a burden. It's a blueprint. You were born to see differently because you were born to create differently. And then comes the fourth shadow pain, the pain of rejection. The more you evolve, the more people fall away. Friends disappear. Lovers can't handle your depth. Family members call you too much. You become the outsider, the black sheep, the Vanda. But what if rejection is redirection? What if the universe is clearing your field so that only those who match your resonance can remain? You're not being punished. You're being purified. Only those who can walk beside a storm without running will be able to hold space for your fire. And until those people arrive, you must learn to walk alone, not in bitterness, but in power. Let me ask you a question. What if your deepest wound is also your greatest portal to wisdom? This brings us to the fifth shadow pain, the pain of ancestral karma. You didn't just inherit your eye color or your last name. You inherited pain, patterns, and programming that go back generations. You feel it in your bones, the rage that isn't yours, the sadness that came before you, the guilt that has no origin. You are the one chosen to break the chain. The curses that ran through your bloodline stop with you. That's why your suffering seems disproportionate. That's why your life feels like a battlefield. Because you're not just healing yourself, you're healing timelines. And that kind of mission is not for the faint-hearted. The sixth shadow pain is perhaps the most disorienting, the pain of identity death. You spend years building a version of yourself. You wear masks to survive. You play roles to be accepted, but the calling demands authenticity. And so one day, everything starts to crumble. The job you thought you wanted, gone. The relationship you invested in, ends. The beliefs you clung to, shattered. You're left naked, raw, undefined. It feels like a death, because it is. But every death births a new self. The dark chosen one must die 1,000 ego deaths in order to remember who they truly are. You are not your name. You are not your achievements. You are the observer behind it all. And once you remember that, the world can no longer control you. And finally, we arrive at the seventh shadow pain, the pain of divine responsibility. Once you awaken, you can't go back. You see the suffering of others and feel compelled to help. But you also know that you can't save those who are not ready. This creates an unbearable tension. You want to scream the truth from the rooftops, but you know it will fall on deaf ears. You want to uplift others, but some choose their chains. And so the dark chosen one learns to walk the middle path, not forcing, not fixing, but embodying. You become the light in the dark, the calm in the chaos. Not by preaching, but by being. Your life becomes the message. Your presence becomes the prayer. Now take a breath. How many of these pains do you recognize in yourself? How many storms have you survived in silence? How many times have you questioned your path, your sanity, your worth, only to find a deeper truth waiting on the other side? If you're still with me, then maybe you've just realized something. You're not cursed. You're called. Through the abyss, how pain initiates the power of the dark chosen. You see, when the pain doesn't break you, it builds you, but it doesn't happen overnight. The path of the dark chosen one is not a straight line. It's a spiral, a descent, a forgetting before the remembering. After you've been shattered by the 7 shadow pains, something strange and terrifying begins to happen. You no longer see pain as the enemy. You begin to sense its intelligence, its precision. You look back at your past not with regret but with awe. Every betrayal, every failure, every dark night of the soul, it was all part of the crafting, like a sacred blacksmith hammering divine purpose into your bones. You were not being punished. You were being prepared, and this changes everything. Do you remember the moment you stopped asking, "Why me?" and started asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That moment is the true initiation. That's when the identity of the victim dies and the soul begins to rise, not in arrogance, but in awareness. You start to understand that your suffering was not meaningless. It was intelligent. It was designed to take you to the edge of yourself so that you could meet the part of you untouched by the world, the part of you that cannot be destroyed. That is the birth of power, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that no longer gets dominated by illusion. And it begins always in the abyss. The abyss is not a metaphor. It's real. It's the moment where everything familiar dissolves, where even your spiritual tools stop working, where prayers echo back in silence, where the universe feels like it has abandoned you. No insights, no signs, just stillness, emptiness, void. And in that terrifying silence, something inside you begins to awaken, a knowing beyond words. A presence that watches your panic but does not participate. That presence is your true self. And you realize you are not your fear. You are the one witnessing it. That shift in perception is the true alchemy. That's when pain becomes a portal. That's when the dark chosen one begins to see. But here's the catch. This power isolates you even more. Because once you begin to see the matrix, it's impossible to unsee it. You notice how people are addicted to their suffering, how they defend their limitations, how they worship comfort over growth. And you, who have walked through fire, can no longer pretend to play their games. You become the mirror they avoid. Your very presence disturbs their illusions. And so they call you intense, cold, too deep. But you're not too deep. They're just not used to the ocean. And you must remember this. Your depth is not a flaw. It is your medicine. But not everyone is ready to drink it. This creates a paradox. You become more powerful, yet more alone. More awakened, yet more misunderstood. And in that tension, you face the most dangerous temptation: to dim your light just to be accepted, to shrink so others feel safe, to pretend you're normal. But the dark chosen one cannot afford this luxury. You were not sent here to be liked. You were sent here to be real. And realness has a cost. It means losing fake friendships. It means walking away from shallow conversations. It means saying no when your soul is screaming enough. And that's not easy, but it's necessary, because your soul didn't come here to fit in. It came here to evolve. You start to realize that the universe has been communicating with you this entire time, not through words, but through synchronicities, through gut feelings, through breakdowns that led to breakthroughs, through the people who hurt you and the people who helped you. Everything was a message. And when you finally start listening, you begin to operate on a different frequency. You stop chasing. You stop begging. You stop needing validation. You move with quiet knowing, with presence, with authenticity. And that energy begins to attract the right people, opportunities, and experiences, not because you're manifesting from ego, but because you're aligned with soul. And then something even more mysterious happens. You begin to see the pain of others. You feel their wounds. You hear the words they don't say. You start to realize that most people are walking around with broken hearts and masked faces, terrified someone might see who they really are. And because you've walked through your own hell, you become a sanctuary for others, even if they don't understand it. You're not here to fix them. You're here to hold space, to remind them that it's okay to fall apart, that darkness is not the enemy, that the wound is where the light enters. You don't preach this, you live it. And that difference is everything. But don't mistake this spiritual maturity for perfection. Even as a dark chosen one, you still fall. You still fall. You still doubt. The difference is that now you don't run from it. You sit with it. You let it move through you. You've learned that healing is not linear, that awakening is messy, that wisdom is born through humility. And in that roundness, you become something rare, someone who is both powerful and soft, fierce and compassionate, grounded and limitless. You become a walking paradox, a living bridge between the seen and the unseen. And that is your true gift. Not knowledge, not ability, but presence. Your presence becomes the medicine that others didn't know they needed. So, let me ask you something, and don't answer quickly. Sit with this question like it's a doorway. What if your pain wasn't a curse to escape, but a doorway to walk through? What if everything you thought disqualified you was actually your greatest qualification? What if the universe didn't abandon you, but chose you because it knew you were strong enough to carry the weight that would crush others? The return of the shadow alchemist, turning pain into power and solitude into leadership. There comes a moment in every dark chosen one's journey where the pain no longer defines you. It refines you. It refines you. You stop seeing yourself as a wounded warrior, and instead you begin to embody the sacred role of the shadow alchemist. You've seen the underworld of your own soul, and not only did you survive it, you learned its language. You learned how to sit inside your own chaos without needing to escape. You learned how to breathe through the fire instead of running from it. And now, without even trying, people begin to gravitate toward you. Not because you are loud, but because you are real. Not because you give them answers, but because your presence alone reminds them of who they are. This is the birth of spiritual leadership, not the kind that seeks followers, but the kind that awakens leaders in others. But this transition is subtle and often invisible. You don't wake up one day and declare, "I am a guide now." No, you just start living differently. You start speaking your truth even when your voice shakes. You stop betraying yourself to please others. You begin to trust your intuition more than the opinions of the crowd. And slowly, your life begins to mirror your inner truth. You stop needing to prove yourself because your energy speaks louder than words. You become the person you needed when you were breaking. And in doing so, you become a lighthouse, not because you shine for attention, but because you remember what it felt like to drown in the dark. There is a profound responsibility in this. When you carry the medicine of the shadow, you must also carry discernment. Not everyone is ready to be healed. Not everyone wants to wake up. There is a strange safety in staying asleep. And if you're not careful, your empathy will become your prison. You'll start pouring your light into cups that were never meant to hold it. You'll mistake your role as guide for the role of savior. And that's not your task. Your task is not to save. Your task is to embody. To become such a clear mirror that others see themselves more clearly in your presence. To become so whole that your wholeness reminds others of their own potential. That's it. You are not here to convince. You are here to be. And still, there will be days when the old wounds whisper again. Days when the shadow creeps back in, when the loneliness returns, when the divine silence stretches on too long. This is not a failure. This is the rhythm of the sacred spiral. Healing is not a destination, it's a dance. A deep, intimate tango with the self. The more you grow, the deeper the layers you uncover. But now, you no longer fear the darkness. You greet it like an old friend. You say, "Welcome. What are you here to teach me this time?" This is true mastery, not escaping the shadow, but integrating it so completely that even your pain becomes part of your power. And this integration changes your vibration. You begin to notice that your very energy disrupts the false. People can't lie to you anymore without feeling uncomfortable. Places that used to drain you now repel you. Conversations that once entertained you now bore you. You are no longer able to tolerate anything that isn't aligned with your truth. And that's not arrogance, that's evolution. You are becoming more precise, more intentional, more sovereign. You don't need to cut people off with drama anymore. Your frequency does it for you. And those who remain, they are your soul tribe. Not because they look like you or talk like you, but because they feel like home. You begin to see the beauty in the journey. You stop resenting the pain and start honoring it. You realize the heartbreak cracked you open for a reason. The betrayal pushed you back to yourself. The solitude wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Everything makes sense in hindsight. But now, you don't need hindsight anymore. You begin to trust the unfolding in real time. You begin to live from the soul, not the script. You no longer ask, "What should I do?" but instead, "What feels true?" That shift unlocks a different life entirely. A life not of control, but of alignment. Not of chasing, but of allowing. Not of fear, but of trust. So let me ask you now, at the end of this journey, who are you when no one is watching? Who are you underneath the stories, the scars, the survival masks? Are you ready to stop hiding? Are you ready to stop apologizing for your depth, your sensitivity, your vision, your power? Because the world doesn't need more people pretending to be perfect. It needs more people willing to be real. People who have danced with their darkness and emerged with the golden thread of wisdom. People who understand that the shadow is not the opposite of light, it is the womb of it. And if you've made it this far, then maybe you've realized something sacred. You're not just a survivor. You're not even just a healer. You are the alchemist, the one who turned your pain into purpose, your wounds into wisdom, and your solitude into leadership. This is the return of the dark chosen one, not to save the world, but to become the kind of world where others remember how to save themselves. Never forget, the fire didn't burn you, it forged you. Now go, be the mirror, be the mystery, be the mystery. Completion of the return of the shadow alchemist. And now, as the circle closes, you begin to see that everything has always been leading to this moment, this awareness, this embodiment. You no longer need the applause. You no longer crave the answers. You begin to live in the mystery, trusting its rhythm more than your mind's logic. You walk through the world differently now, not above others, but rooted deeper in yourself. You no longer seek validation because truth has become your compass. You don't fear rejection because you've already faced the deepest abandonment of self, and overcome it. What once broke you now fuels you. What once silenced you now empowers your voice. And in your silence there is power. In your stillness there is thunder. You've become quiet not because you have nothing to say, but because you've realized truth doesn't need to shout. There will be moments ahead when the darkness returns, not to punish, but to initiate you again. Because this path is not a one-time awakening. It is a lifelong unraveling. a sacred remembering, layer by layer, lifetime by lifetime. But now you move through it with grace, with awareness, with reverence. You know the storms by name. You know the shadows scent. You greet it like a teacher, not an enemy. And in doing so, you teach others not by words, but by presence. You become the proof that pain can be holy, that solitude can be sacred, and that darkness, when embraced, becomes the deepest form of light. This is the paradox. This is the path. This is the power of the dark chosen one, fully awakened. So now the question is no longer, why me? The question becomes, what will I do with this power? Not everyone will understand your path. Many will fear your depth, but the right ones will recognize you by the energy you carry. They'll feel it in your eyes, in your silence, in your truth. And when they do, they'll remember something ancient within themselves, something they forgot in their rush to be normal. That is how your light travels, through resonance, not performance, through being, not doing. So walk forward, not with certainty, but with clarity, not with a map, but with trust. You are no longer lost. You are no longer becoming. You are who you were always meant to be. The darkness didn't break you. It revealed you. And now, you rise.